Good?
Linda. This is what,
All right.
This is what I showed him right now.
All right, good evening, everybody. For the record, it is Thursday, June 25th, 2020, time for the regular meeting of the Wenatchee City Council. I called the meeting to order. We always start with a pledge to our flag. I'm not sure whose turn it is. Councilmember Kulas, would you lead us?
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Kulas. For the record, we have 6 council members present in the meeting room. We have Councilmember Esparza on the phone, and the city attorney is also on the phone. First item on our agenda tonight are the consent items, which includes this evening's agenda, vouchers, and the minutes from the previous meetings, and a resolution to change our meeting schedule for November and December.
And I'll make a motion to approve the agenda, vouchers, and minutes from previous meetings, and make a motion to adopt resolution number 2020-21, revising the regular meeting schedule for November and December 2020.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Huffaker, second by Councilmember Kulas to approve the consent items, including the agenda, vouchers, and the minutes from the previous meetings, and resolution number 2020-21, revising the regular meeting schedule for November and December of 2020. Discussion?
Member Sparser, are you on the line?
Hearing none. Assuming that wasn't discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And just for the new council members, we do adjust our November and December schedules. One, because a Thursday falls on Thanksgiving, and then we also try to get our work done by that first or second Tuesday in December so that we can get some time off for the end of the year. So that's been a revised schedule we've done for quite some time. We have one presentation tonight regarding Scout Me In. So from the Grand Columbia Council of Boy Scouts, who's got that? Anybody have that to read into the record? If not, I will read in the record because I have it right here on my handy little iPad. So proclamation for the Grand Columbia Council Scout Me In Day, July 29th, 2020. Whereas the Grand Columbia Council of the Boy Scouts of America in Central Washington has an outstanding legacy and received national acclaim for youth and family involvement in outdoor recreation, conservation of nature, youth leadership activities, and career development. Whereas the Grand Columbia Council was founded 95 years ago in 1925 to prepare young people to make ethical and moral choices over their lifetimes by teaching them the values of the Scout Oath and the Scout Law. The Council provides boys and girls the nation's foremost youth character and leadership program. Whereas the Grand Columbia Council has 1,000 boys and girls and 80 leaders who direct scouting programs for youth from the Columbia River to the Canadian border and from Snoqualmie Pass to Ritzville. Our community seeks to pay tribute to the work of scouts, scout leaders, and volunteers who maintain lives of honesty, discipline, and purpose. Whereas the Grand Columbia Council seeks to strengthen current scouting programs and ensure scouting opportunities for future generations. Whereas the Grand Columbia Council invites the public to participate in July's River Run Regatta, involving a month of scouting activities culminating in a scouting program, live and live stream on their website in Yakima or Wenatchee on July 29th, 2020. Whereas the River Run Regatta will bring support to improve Camp Fire, Camp Bonaparte, and Camp Summit Vista and increase training in the city's waterways, lakes, forests, and mountains of Central Washington and fuel the achievement of expanding dens, troops, units, and volunteers. And whereas the Grand Columbia Council delivers programs that help generate community leaders who guide and lead their communities for generations to come, enabling these communities to be appreciated and safe havens for all people. Now, therefore, I, the mayor, and the city council members of the city of Wenatchee do hereby proclaim July 29th, 2020 as Scout Me In Day in the city of Wenatchee. In witness whereof, I have caused the seal of the city of Wenatchee to be affixed on this 25th day of June 2020, Frank Kuntz, Mayor. So we will make sure that there's a laminated copy of that and make sure we get it to the Grand Columbia Council. Action items, we only have 3 or 4 for this evening. So the first is regarding acceptance of some art on the Avenues donation. David Erickson.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Dave Erickson, Parks and Recreation Director. for the city. So at the last meeting, we brought forward a number of art sculptures that were part of the Art of the Avenues visiting collection that they were going to donate to the city, and council accepted that. At that meeting, I mentioned that we had a couple that we were still working on trying to get all the purchases done from the artist and everything. And we were able to successfully do that, thanks to Art on the Avenues. And so they would like to donate these sculptures now to the city, and this actually is the last time you'd see this because this completes the entire collection. And Art on the Avenues then moves on to Beauty of Bronze. So we have 2.5 sculptures, Life's a Ball, Curtsy, and then the half is the Gathering of Owls sculpture. And we're purchasing half of the value of that, and then they're donating the rest. And we talked about that at the Finance Committee meeting a couple weeks ago. With that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Erickson? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I'd move to approve the acceptance of the donation of sculptures from Art on the Avenues.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Bailey, second by Councilmember Harold to make a motion to approve the acceptance of the donation of the sculptures from the Arts on the Avenue. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, David. Mr. Jammerman, looks like we're getting the Haran Road vacation and purchase a little closer to the finish line.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I'm here to present this resolution to you to establish the public hearing for the proposed street vacation of Haran Road. This is being brought to us by the PUD in conjunction with their proposed headquarters in Old Station. It is the portion in your packet you see of Haran Road south of Old Station. It's establishing the hearing date of July 23rd. And we are following the procedures identified in the RCW 35.79. So it is a two-step process. We come tonight and set the hearing, the public hearing on the 23rd.
So I do have a question for Steve Smith. So we have this is the notice of public hearing. We have a public hearing, we vacate it, and then there's an agreement between the city and the PUD for a remuneration. That's a separate agreement? Or they just bring in cash, or how do we get the money for Haran Road?
So typically, we won't complete the vacation till the money comes in.
Okay.
So we'd have to work out that agreement. If we want to document it somehow, we could, but.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're not legally vacating property without proper consideration or notice of consideration in the next time we do it.
Yeah, so normally the ordinance will say that it's effective upon payment, of such and such.
Okay, so we'll see that at the public hearing then.
Yes, yeah, when you do the final action.
Perfect.
Do we have a firm number for that?
I believe it's still the $400,000 that we talked about. Steve Smith thought we needed to get an appraisal done, but I think he changed his mind. So I think at this point, it's still $400,000 minus a couple of dollars for some engineering work they did on behalf of the walkway for us or the bike trail.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it ends up being $375 or something like that.
They're for the council that maybe aren't aware of that, they're in the mayor's discussion with the PUD, what they agreed on, $400,000 less a study by RH2 to complete the Chatham Hill Trail connection. So if you've seen the headquarters plans, they're building a trail on the river. They're proposing to build a trail on the riverfront to a kiosk to kind of recognize the Haran House, historic. And then from there, there's a missing link to get over underneath the Wenatchee River Bridge. And so that's being studied right now by RH2, and it'll be shown on their plans as a future trail connection. And then we'll seek funding on that. So that study is trying to get that study done so we know how much it's going to cost, what it's going to take to get that.
Was that the only thing we were hoping to get out of that? I just, it's been so long since we talked about this, but it seemed like there was something else we were hoping to accomplish.
I think
Since
there
we knew
was
they needed that
some
road.
thoughts about trying to get road traffic down there, to people to park and drop their boats into the water, take their boats out of the water, sort of more of a public access down there. The PUD sort of pushed back and said they are going to provide a bike trail that goes down there, and then there's going to be a trail connection that comes up from the loop trail that connects to that and then comes up and starts the next one. So in meeting with, I think, our Public Works Committee, and I think Finance Committee has talked about this a little bit, that we sort of felt like not perfect, but was enough for us. And then I think on the price deal, we didn't have an appraisal, but we had a sort of evaluation done of, I think, well, this is Steve King said he thought I was worth, between 500,000 and 600,000, but there's going to be an easement for, we got sewer lines in there, and so you take half off for the easement, that would be around 300. Steve Wright said we had it appraised at 400, and we'll just give you the full value for it. We're not going to worry about it. So I thought the number seemed not out of character for either value it and minus the easement portion, or so we'll have to get an easement for sewer lines in there. So I think the 400 seems like sort of the right number for what we're getting, and then. There is some legal requirements that Brad's got to figure out. Some of it needs to go to open space and some of it needs to go to something else, but I think we'll do a little bit of supplanting of fund. We've already paid for some stuff, so I think most of it will end up sort of back in our general fund, which will end up in facilities to help pay for the facility stuff we're doing. So hopefully we'll get this all done in the next couple of weeks or in a couple of months. Yeah. Did that answer your question, Keith?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. If there's any other questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2020-22, setting the hearing date and time to consider the request for vacation of a portion of the Haran Road right-of-way.
Second. Motion by Councilmember Kulas and second by Councilmember Hornby to adopt resolution number 2020-22, setting a hearing date and a time to consider the request for vacation of a portion of the Haran Road right-of-way. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Rob. All right, looks like we're going to got some more money for our homeless program. So Glenn, Oliver, come on up.
We can swap that. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We have some additional funding sources that
So introduce your comrade over there. I don't know
Oh,
if all the
yes.
council members know him.
Oliver Crane, housing coordinator with the city of Wenatchee. And we have 2 grant awards that to add to our funding for the Schland Douglas homeless funds. The task force, Schland Douglas task force oversees those funds, and then we receive their recommendations, and the city provides the final oversight on the funding component, adopting it in our budget. City staff administers the program, but essentially the agreement is that fundamentally the task force makes those decisions, and Councilmember Linda Harold is on that task force as a voting member. Excuse me, there are a total of 7 voting members on the task force. So they have, I'll let Oliver get into the details, but there are a significant number of potential funding shortages due to state budgets, potentially maybe declining dollars from recordings. We're watching that, but high likelihood that we're going to have sort of a huge increase of additional need for rapid rehousing vouchers for the placement of folks. Right now, there's a moratorium on evictions. So there's a good potential well, there's a high potential that we're going to have funding shortfalls. These funds tonight help fill some of those gaps, certainly not all of them, but they are very welcome. So Oliver is going to provide an overview of these funds.
Thank you, Glenn. So we have two opportunities in front of us that I'd like to share with you tonight. And one is from time to time during a grant term, and our grant terms are 2 years, we are notified by the Department of Commerce, who's our main grantor, that additional funds become available. One of the funding sources is HEN, Housing and Essential Needs. It's available for housing assistance for people who are unable to work. They primarily are referred to this assistance through DSHS here locally. Commerce has notified us that we have an additional $108,000 available for Chelan and Douglas counties. And so tonight we're asking the council to authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with Commerce to accept that money. Currently our HEN contractor is Community Action Council, and so we are looking at bolstering the assistance they're able to provide in a lot of different areas. Rapid rehousing, which is rent assistance for homeless households, looking to put about half the funds towards direct rent assistance, but also for people who are in housing right now in rentals, putting about a quarter of it towards rent assistance there. Then of course covering their operations costs and their admin costs. So this $102,000, $103,000 covers the balance minus the city's admin. So 108 minus the city's 5% admin. So that is the HEN funding. We also were surprised to learn that through the CARES Act, a new allocation of funding became available, and that is the Emergency Solutions Grant. These funds are used to respond to the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak, especially among households that are homeless or receiving homeless assistance. So whatever can be done to mitigate the spread of the disease or to help them as they're displaced. So Chelan and Douglas counties received $263,000, or $263,901 for a grant term that starts July 15th and runs until September 30th of 2022, about 26 months. So we submitted the application on behalf of Chelan and Douglas counties, and we're asking tonight that the council authorize the mayor to enter into a contract when a contract is available with the Department of Commerce to accept these funds per the recommendation of our Chelan Douglas Homeless Housing Task Force. The task force had some recommendations on who should receive this funding. So they recommended that Chelan Douglas Community Action Council receive an allocation for their rapid rehousing program. Currently on our coordinated entry wait list, we have about 220 households who are waiting for some form of housing assistance and are in a homeless situation. So living in a car, living in a shelter. So this funding would help them identify rentals, get rent assistance, move in, get out of congregate shelters, get into places they can self-isolate. We've also asked that, well, it's also been recommended that Community Action's Emergency Shelter Program receive additional funding. This program's for the hardest to house individuals with some of the greatest needs and the highest barriers. It's been depleted because hotel motel vouchers are an expensive intervention, but during this emergency, it makes sense to bolster that fund. And the same with Chelan Valley Hope's program for emergency shelter, hotel motel vouchers, an additional amount to bolster their funds as they respond to the outbreak up in Chelan. So total there is 95% of the award, 5% stays with the city to cover admin costs. Yeah, just a little bit more about the allowable intervention. So these funds could be used for emergency shelter, prevention rent assistance, rapid rehousing rent assistance, street outreach. They will, these agencies already participate in our coordinated entry system. They use the data systems associated with homeless assistance. And they don't currently require that anyone undergo drug treatment or counseling in order to access services. So we're feeling This recommendation falls in line very much with the requirements of the grant. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
And we did talk at Finance Committee a little bit about, I know we had a bit of a kerfuffle, if you will, 6 months or so ago over some of the homeless funding, and sounds like that's all sort of worked its way out. We're all sort of rowing the boat in the same direction, and the recommendations were unanimous, and city feels good about where the money's going, so I appreciate the staying at it, and sounds like all that's sort of getting better.
It's going well.
Good.
We envision that going forward that we're going to be, we are tracking closely the needs, and we think the needs are going to be increasing significantly, that we will have gaps. These are very welcome additions for funding to help with those gaps, but we imagine that we'll be before you again as we look at how to address these emerging and growing needs. I think we have some recommendations before you here.
So we're recommending that the council authorize the mayor to enter into an amended agreement with Commerce and then be able to turn around and sign amended contract with Community Action. And then we're also recommending that the council authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with Commerce for this new Emergency Solutions Grant funding, and then enter into 2 sub-grantee agreements with Community Action and Chelan Valley Hope per the allocations recommended by the Homeless Task Force.
So I think we could do this either in one big motion if everyone's agreeable, or you can take them separately. I don't really care, but I'm guessing we could probably do it in one big one.
Looks like one big one.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion,
Probably just to accept the Homeless Task Force
to
recommendations.
accept the Homeless Task Force recommendation and authorize the mayor to enter into an amended grant agreement between the Department of Commerce and the City of Wenatchee for Consolidation Homeless Housing and Essential Needs Grant, CHG and HEN. Also to enter into an amended 1-year grant agreement with the Chelan Douglas Community Action Council as recommended by the Chelan Douglas Homeless Housing Task Force, and to enter into a new grant agreement between the Department of Commerce and the City of Wenatchee for the CARES Act Emergency Solutions Grant, ECG-CV. And lastly, to enter into 2 ESGCV sub-guarantee agreements with the Chelan Douglas Community Action Council and Chelan Valley Hope as recommended by the Chelan Douglas Homeless Housing Task Force.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Huffaker, second by Councilmember Cuevas to accept the Homeless Task Force recommendations and authorize the mayor to enter into an amended grant agreement between the Department of Commerce and the City of Wenatchee for consolidated homeless housing and essential needs grants. Enter to an amended 1-year grant agreement with the Chelan Douglas Community Action Council as recommended by the Chelan Douglas Homeless Housing Task Force. Enter into a new grant agreement between the Department of Commerce and the City of Wenatchee for the CARES Act Emergency Solutions Grant, and enter into 2 ESG-CV sub-grantee agreements with the Chelan Douglas Community Action Council and Chelan Valley Hope as recommended by the Chelan Douglas Homeless Housing Task Force. Any discussion, questions for Oliver or Glenn? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Oliver. Thanks, Glenn.
Our thanks to Oliver. He really jumped on the ESG grant.
Good job, Oliver.
First time frame, and he's one of the stars in the homeless program, trying to make the most of limited dollars and resources. So thanks, Oliver. Thank you.
Thanks, Oliver.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, I'll try to make my comments sort of brief, just sort of on the how is work going at the city. We started on Monday with all employees actually working in the office now. So we started that. We gave them a week or so after going to phase 1.5 where offices could be open and employees could come back to work. So most of our staff in both places are actually working in the office wearing masks, except when they're out. They can be in their office not wearing a mask, but once they're out. So I think it's business as usual, except for we're still not allowing customers in any of the buildings at this point. So I'm not sure when that changes, if that's phase 3. Laura gave me a 3 signal. So it sounds like phase 3, we would start actually having customers come into the office. So a little bit back to normal. I did go out to Public Works and there was actually people upstairs working that looked sort of like normal, except everyone had a mask on, but nice to see folks sort of out back to normal. Really not, most of the other stuff is sort of, we've toured a few folks through the old fire station the other day, so there's some interest. At some point, we'll do more of a public one, but we get some phone calls every now and then. Folks want to go tour the old fire station, so we've taken a few folks through there off and on. Spending a little bit of time with Dimitri from Localtel, trying to figure out where to put the new power to the building. So for those of you that don't know, there are 3 transformers inside this building. Circa 1960, and you got to remember the federal government is not required to get building permits when they build stuff. So they're probably not the safest things in the world. So we're in the process of moving them out. The PUD has agreed to help sort of remove them from the building. We got to figure out where the heck we're supposed to put it. And then there's going to be some redundancy power, and then there's going to be a generator. And so we're sort of sorting out a little bit about where. And then, of course, we have the condominium agreement and sort of who's supposed to pay for what. So poor staff spent a ton of time with trying to figure out the right spot to do all that. But it's been interesting over the last week or so. I've been involved in quite a few of that discussion. And I think just one other thing, and I'll be a little bit careful about how I couch this, since our friends at the media are listening from home. So we, on the NEPA work that we've been doing, we are, if you remember last year, we set aside money to do our paving project, and we had it all set aside, and then we got $2 million from the CDC, from the Chelan Douglas Transportation Council to put into the program. So we took $2 million out for NEPA, for environmental work on Confluence Parkway. And so we are working our way through the $2 million. We're more than halfway through it. The other part that you'll remember is we had an agreement with Chelan County PUD that we would take on some work regarding the FERC licenses, because part of Confluence Parkway would be going into an area that's under the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission's boundaries for the dams. And so there was a bunch of work that would have to happen. And I think rightfully so, the city said we would take that on. It's our project, for goodness sakes. Well, meanwhile, back at the ranch, I think, Steve King's thought was, well, we would get infra and that would help pay for that piece of the work. So we didn't get infra. And so that money isn't available to pay for that piece of the work. We got a sort of a rough idea of costs of about $700,000 to do the FERC sort of stuff. So it begs the question, should we sort of back away from this for a while? Or do we go full throttle on NEPA, knowing that we're still going to be $700,000 short of getting everything we need done? And we're 20% down on sales tax right now, and we're not printing money in the basement anymore. So there's just been a little bit of, the Finance Committee talked about it a little bit. I don't want to answer from you guys today. I just want you to know, in my mind, I'm starting to think a little bit about what the right role for the city is at this point. I have had a brief conversation with Steve Wright at the PUD, well, the two entities that have all of the money, which would be the PUD and then Link. So I've talked to Richard DeRock, and they're both going to sort of think about it a little bit. So just want you to think about, I don't want an answer. I just want you to know that staff and us have been spending quite a bit of time sort of thinking about what that might look like. And quite frankly, if you look at the 22 projects that got funded, 21 were DOT projects. So at what point does our project have to become a State Department of Transportation project for it to get funded? And then how would you make that happen, even if you got all the way through some of your NEPA work? So I think it's a sort of a moving target. I just wanted you to know I'm sort of been spending some time thinking about that. And I've met with staff. I went with Rob and Laura and Brad and Matt Shales and Gary Owen. We were sort of just thinking about it. So just some things for you all to sort of think about.
Can we go back?
To have, are both of those things tied together? I mean, you talked about doing NEPA
You could do,
Going, I mean,
yep, you could do
we don't have
NEPA.
to do the first
And
step
you-
until
you-
we're ready to start throwing dirt, right?
Yeah, and it's a 2-year process. There could be a year process to do the FERC stuff. Plus the PUD's going through a licensing issue. And if they get it relicensed before we get our money, then you got to go in and relicense that part of it. And are you agree? I mean, there's just, it makes sense to do it all at the same time so you can wrap that all up in a bow and say you're sort of done. And that gives us a 10-year window to get funding. Once your NEPA's done, then you've got this magic 10 years of time that you can go get funding and not have to redo environmental work. So, and you can't really.
But only 10 years.
10 years is what the NEPA time lasts. And so, again, we could, it's also a time, I think, for the other, I'll use the term partners, those others that would benefit from a Confluence Parkway to look and say, well, maybe this is going to go away, or maybe, maybe there's some money from Link, and maybe there's some money from the PUD and some money from the city to help get that $700,000 gap, right? Maybe it's the third, and then I go, okay, now that's going to get us all the way, and we've got some partners with us to help look at it. Maybe that's the right answer, right? Maybe that's something that gets them on board with us. We've been sort of rowing the boat by ourselves. Might be nice to have a couple of folks in the boat with us. So we'll spend some time talking to them. Again, I talked to Richard Durock and Steve Wright on the phone this week. I'll follow up with them in a week or so and see if they've got any inklings of how that might look. And, in your old econ class, everything you spent prior to this is a sunk cost, right? You're never going to get it back.
Mhm.
The issue is, does it make sense going forward, knowing what you know today, to keep going or not? And I think that's a valid question for us, sort of like the federal building, right? Knowing everything we know today, should we remodel downstairs? Yeah, I think that probably makes sense. Knowing everything we know today, should we keep going on NEPA? I don't know yet. I'm not quite sure yet. So I just want you to know don't expect an answer. I just something to sort of put in the back of your mind as you think about sort of where we're headed. And Brad's going to spend some time looking at our budget. You saw the sales tax today was 20% less in April than April from the year before. So we're starting to, I think, see where we think April was closed for the entire month. So I think we think that's sort of what the number is going to look like. And then hopefully sort of work our way out of it a little bit. But he'll be putting some budget numbers together. You'll see sometime sort of mid-July as to where we think things are landing, I think, for 2020, and then sort of maybe just a sort of a rough look at what 2021 might look like. So we got to start thinking about that as we sort of start working our way through it. But I don't think the 20% was necessarily a bad number. There were still pages and pages and pages and pages of zeros, right? Just a whole bunch of businesses that had no revenue or didn't report. I think most of this time were people that had no revenue. You can sort of look at the list and go, okay, that one didn't, yeah. So there's, and a big drop off in the car dealership stuff, which you would expect. And so I think most of it was sort of what you would expect from looking. But yeah, I think it's, yeah. And then I'm on the board of the Town Toyota Center. We did have a meeting today. Things are going okay. I think we're down to 5 employees or 6 employees working. I think they're working 32 hours a week at this point. I quite frankly don't believe there'll be a hockey season, but they're still leaving hope that there will be. So if there is not a hockey season, then there'll have to be some other changes probably down there as we sort of wait for large group gatherings to take place. Council members, anything? Are we meeting?
Chamber is kind of starting to reopen again, and
Okay.
had another good Zoom meeting this last week. Not a lot to report. They're seeing a lot of businesses struggle still. So because of that, a lot of businesses haven't really been funding them recently. Just they're holding off, waiting to see whether they're going to survive or not.
Okay.
So that's still a pretty big concern.
And you did see where the port, they've put $900,000 of CARES money they gave to the Port of Chelan County to give out to businesses in the county, and that includes businesses in the city of Wenatchee. So,
But that was 900 out of the 4 million you
yes,
thought they got?
4 million that they got, yes.
I was a little disappointed at how low that number was out of the money they received.
Yeah. And I think some of it, there may be some more later. I don't know why they came up with 920. I don't know what their thought was, but.
So anyway, yeah, the chamber is slowly starting to reopen and getting back to work, so.
Good. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order?
No, it wasn't good.
There's a subcommittee for the homeless task force. We're meeting again on July 8th, I think.
Okay. And you guys did the AWC convention via Zoom
Yes.
sort of today?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
yeah.
Yesterday and today.
Oh, yesterday. and
Business
today.
meeting today that
It was really good for an hour and 45 minutes.
45 minutes and then
It went
So if you
on,
think of a business meeting, for how many voters are in there? 400?
yeah.
Well, how many did they say were?
759.
And I swear to goodness, they all spoke except us three.
Oh, Linda did, and she got on.
Yeah, Linda.
Yeah, they called me, I had raised my hand on there to second a motion, and for some reason, the computer didn't release it. And so
Okay.
I
they're
think
calling on me to make a comment. and
Things
I'm
went
like,
good. Jim and I, Councilmember Bailey and I talked. I think we're going to be making some suggestions that they do some structural changes to the bylaws because people were bringing up motions to change policy documents. They did not submit anything in writing, and so it's
Right.
Yeah,
like trying to grab smoke.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that was a real apparent thing. And then the other issue was motions amending amendments, amending amendments.
it just went on and on. It was ridiculous.
Down to wordsmithing.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah,
you don't want to.
essentially wordsmith.
Yeah, with 150 voter members in the
Do you
room.
put the
yeah.
word tribes before state government or after?
Yeah.
On the other front, though, the new president is the mayor of Twisp.
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mayor's Moody?
Suing.
yeah.
Yeah, good for her.
And
She's last year she was chairing the education committee and I sat on that committee. She's a very amazing individual, very talented, very
Yes.
smart. She's going to be great.
yeah. And I think Ed Stern he did a good job for the last year, so.
Did you sit in on the webinar this afternoon?
No, I couldn't do this afternoon's one.
I did. It was very, very good. It was on racism.
Yeah, I think those have been, there's also the static ones that are recorded, and I think that's been recorded as well, too.
That was recorded. They were asking on there if we were going to be able to see it again, because I would like to sit through it again.
Yes, yeah.
And,
So everyone will
They
probably be
did.
getting an email about checking in and
Okay.
watching these different seminars.
Okay.
And if you watch them, there'll be a way for you to report your certificate of municipal leadership credits. So it will
Okay.
go towards that, which you're going to want to earn.
if you go onto the website, it's really easy to get your certificate now because you can just go in and do the webinars online and then you will be certified and get your CML.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, everybody, so.
Ruth?
Next week is
Ruth,
week
are you
off.
still there, Ruth?
Yeah, Ruth, are you there?
I am.
Do you have an update from Chelan Douglas Health by chance?
We're meeting tomorrow on a few issues. The first is Barry Kling's retirement. The second has to do with preparing a new Phase 2 proposal to the governor. And the third is, how we proceed with the local reopening phases.
Thank you.
So it sounds like the earliest we could apply to Phase 2 would be sometime the middle of next week?
I believe June 30th.
Okay, that would be the
That's
middle,
fine.
that would be the middle of next week. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, so next week is a week off for us. The 4th of July fireworks will go off Saturday the 4th at 10 a.m. to a closed park. So go find the nearest hillside that you want to go watch, and that will take place. And then we will meet again on July the 9th. Yes? What was that? Oh, yeah, and I don't know if you saw online, Pinnacles Prep got awarded their charter school today. Unanimous vote, so the state school charter, whatever they do, gave them a unanimous vote. So sounds like they're moving forward. We should probably follow up with Rick and that group. And I think Glenn probably wants to be involved in some of that discussion in terms of remodeling and those sorts of things. But we should follow up with them, make sure what their timing looks like.
Yeah, Dave said that they've been working with their architect closely, so we'll make sure that we can set the connection with those two.
Dave was coordinating with them and suggesting that they get in for they have more detailed plans now.
Okay.
We really want to head off, make the process streamlined, coordinated. You don't have to take up.
Right. Perfect.
Do you know if we'll have a work session this month?
What's that?
Will we have a work session
Yes.
this month?
We're back to normal work sessions.
Okay.
So this one will be the finance in terms of budget and where things are at, and I'm not sure if anything else will be on it, but we're sort of back to work session items.
I'm going to have to call in for
Okay.
it and public safety, as I will be
Not here.
not here.
Okay. Yeah. I'd stick with not here. Yeah. Yeah. All right, anything else? Thanks, Laura, for reminding me of that. Okay, we're adjourned.